Hello, my name is Alexander Grant. I'm 28 years old, and if you look at my life now, you might think I'm a lucky guy. I'm sitting in an office at Pinnacle Financial Technologies where floor-to-ceiling glass windows open to a dazzling view of San Francisco, the city lights twinkling like stars beneath my feet. I'm a strategy specialist here, instrumental in propelling Pinnacle from the top 5 to the throne of the fintech industry, surpassing even my family's empire, Grant Financial Solutions. But if you rewind a few years, you'd see a different Alexander. A kid raised in the shadows of favoritism, in a wealthy family where love was measured by warped expectations and unfair favoritism. My family lived in Pacific Heights, San Francisco's most affluent neighborhood, in a 3-story mansion with glass-covered walls overlooking the bay. From the outside, it was a picture-perfect scene. Lavish wine parties, Rolls-Royces parked in the garage, and my parents, Michael and Victoria Grant, the power couple behind Grant Financial Solutions, America's leading fintech company. But inside, things weren't as dazzling as the Swarovski chandelier hanging in the living room. I grew up alongside my twin brother Isaac, and though we were identical, dark brown hair, deep blue eyes, crooked smiles when stressed, our parents saw us through entirely different lenses. Isaac was the light, the hope, the ideal heir. He had a silver tongue, a charming smile, and the ability to make everyone in the room turn their heads. From a young age, Isaac knew how to make our parents laugh, tell a perfectly timed joke, or flatter mom with an oversized bouquet on her birthday. I was different. I wasn't good at smooth talking. I preferred sitting in a corner, tinkering with numbers, analyzing charts, or reading finance strategy books Dad left on the table. But in my parents' eyes, I was just the smart but dull older brother, someone who lacked leadership qualities. Every time I heard that, it felt like my heart was being squeezed, but I learned to swallow the pain. I vividly remember a Christmas party when I was 15. The mansion was bathed in warm golden lights, the air filled with the scent of fresh pine and gingerbread cookies. Guests, CEOs, investors, partners of Grant Financial Solutions gathered in the living room, wine glasses sparkling in their hands. Dad pulled Isaac up to stand beside him, introducing him as the future star of the company. Isaac, in a bright red sweater and a confident smile, shared a story about convincing a classmate to invest in a mock stock, making the room erupt in laughter. I stood in the corner, holding a glass of apple cider, watching the scene unfold and feeling like an outsider. Mom glanced at me, offering a faint smile. "Alex, why don't you try saying something? Learn from your brother." I mumbled something about a market analysis I'd read, but she only nodded politely before turning away. Dad didn't even bother to look at me. The next day, Isaac received a limited edition Rolex from our parents for winning a school speech competition. I got a gift too, an old finance management book Dad had recycled from his shelf. "This suits you," he said, his voice flat. I smiled, thanked him, but when I got back to my room, I threw the book against the wall. It wasn't about the gift's value, it was the way they looked at me, as if I wasn't worthy of their attention, of the love Isaac received. The favoritism didn't stop at gifts. Isaac accompanied our parents to business events, sat in meetings I only heard about secondhand. At 16, Isaac was given a sports Porsche, while I got a used bicycle and advice to learn to be independent. I didn't hate Isaac. How could I when he was my brother, the only one in the house who'd sneak into my room at midnight to share a Snickers bar? But every time he was praised and pampered, I felt a growing void in my chest. I wondered, what did I do wrong? Why wasn't I good enough? My grandmother Margaret was the only light in those dark days. She lived in Napa Valley in a small house surrounded by sprawling vineyards. Every summer, Isaac and I were sent there, but while Isaac loved running around the garden or playing video games, I preferred sitting with Grandma, listening to her stories. She was a former financial journalist, a fierce woman who built a career in a man's world of suits and ties. "You're like me," she'd say, ruffling my hair. "Smart, patient, but not showy. The fire in you will burn bright, Alex, but it won't be because someone else lit it. You'll do it yourself." On those Napa afternoons, I'd sit on her porch listening to her tales of entrepreneurs who overcame adversity, from Henry Ford to Oprah Winfrey. She gave me books like The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, and we'd analyze investment strategies together. "People might not see your worth now," she'd say, her eyes blazing. "But real value doesn't need anyone's validation. It's in what you do when no one's watching." Her words were like a small flame smoldering within me, keeping me grounded through the years of being overlooked. In high school, I threw myself into business clubs where I could shine without being compared to Isaac. I led my team to first place in a national financial planning competition, building an investment model that grew a mock company's portfolio by 200% in 6 months. When I brought the trophy home, I hoped my parents would be proud. But Dad only nodded. "Good job, but don't let these things distract you. The company needs leaders, not just number crunchers." Mom, busy reviewing Isaac's speech for a charity event, just said, "Put the trophy on the shelf, Alex, don't clutter the house." I started working part-time at a small fintech startup in San Francisco, where I learned basic coding and market data analysis. Every evening I'd bike home under the streetlights, drenched in sweat but filled with a strange joy. There, no one knew me as Isaac's older brother. They called me Alex, the guy who spotted a bug in the company's payment system, the one who suggested a process optimization that saved thousands of dollars. For the first time, I felt seen, but even that small spark wasn't enough to erase Isaac's shadow. One evening when I was 17, I overheard my parents talking in their study. The door was ajar and Dad's voice came through cold and clear. "Isaac is the future of Grant Financial Solutions. He has charisma, vision. Alex is smart, but just a backup." Mom nodded. "Alex will be fine. He always figures things out." I stood outside the door, my fists clenched until they trembled, my heart pounding like it might burst. Backup. The word carved itself into my mind like a wound that would never heal. I stormed back to my room, slammed the door, and looked in the mirror. Messy hair, tired eyes, but there was a spark in them, the spark Grandma Margaret had spoken of. I told myself, if I'm just a backup, I'll be the best damn backup they've ever seen. That night, I wrote my goals on a scrap of paper: get into Stanford, stand on my own, and prove I don't need anyone's validation to succeed. I didn't know that just a few months later, my parents would make a decision that would shatter my world, and at the same time, ignite a fire of determination fiercer than ever. In the spring of my senior year of high school, both Isaac and I applied to Stanford, majoring in economics and financial technology. It was a dream I'd nurtured ever since reading Grandma Margaret's book about entrepreneurs who changed the world. I envisioned myself walking through Stanford's grand lecture halls, learning from brilliant minds and proving I was more than just a backup. I worked tirelessly to earn it: a 4.0 GPA, awards in financial planning competitions, and countless hours self-studying programming to deepen my understanding of fintech. I poured my heart into my Stanford scholarship essay, writing about my self-taught journey and how I found passion in numbers and strategy. When the acceptance letter from Stanford arrived, I shouted in my room, clutching the phone as I called Grandma Margaret. "I did it, Grandma," I said, my voice choking with emotion. She laughed, her voice warm. "I never doubted you, Alex." Isaac got accepted too. His grades weren't as strong, 3.4 GPA, no notable awards, but he had charisma, and his essay was polished by an expensive tutor. I wasn't surprised when he jumped for joy, calling everyone to brag. But I didn't expect my own joy to be crushed so soon by a fateful family dinner. It was a Saturday night, and the Pacific Heights mansion glowed with warm golden light. The polished oak dining table was set with steak and red wine, the kind my parents always chose for special occasions. I sat across from Isaac, forcing a smile as Mom asked about our college plans. I was about to mention the scholarship I'd applied for when Dad raised his hand, signaling silence. "We need to talk about tuition," he said, his tone stern. My heart beat faster. I knew our family was wealthy. Stanford's tuition was pocket change for Grant Financial Solutions, But the way Dad looked at Isaac, then glanced at me with cold eyes, gave me a sinking feeling. "Isaac," Dad began, "your mother and I will cover your full tuition, living expenses, and an apartment near Stanford. You're the future of the company, and we want you to focus on growing into that role." Isaac flashed a radiant smile, nodding eagerly. "Thank you, Mom and Dad. I won't let you down," he said, his voice brimming with excitement. I sat there waiting, hoping Dad would say something about me. But he cleared his throat and turned to me. "As for Alex," he said flatly, "you're smart. You'll figure it out. We believe you can find scholarships or take out loans. If needed, you can work part-time. It'll help you mature." I felt the blood freeze in my veins. Mom nodded, adding, "Alex, you've always been independent. This is your chance to prove it." I looked at them, then at Isaac, who lowered his gaze, looking slightly uneasy but saying nothing. I wanted to scream, to slam the table, to ask why they treated me this way. Instead, I nodded, whispering, "Yes, I understand." Inside, the word backup echoed sharp as a blade. I stood, excused myself, and hurried to my room. As soon as the door closed, I slid to the floor, hands covering my face, tears falling silently. It wasn't about the tuition. I knew I could find a way. It was the feeling of being abandoned, of being deemed unworthy of the love Isaac received. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and began searching for every scholarship available. I applied to dozens of programs, from merit-based awards to funds for independent students. I calculated the costs. Stanford's tuition was about $50,000 a year, not including living expenses. With a partial scholarship and a student loan, I could make it work. But it meant working part-time, maybe 20 to 30 hours a week, while maintaining a high GPA to keep the scholarship. I wrote a plan on a piece of paper. Work. Study. Don't give up. I taped it to the wall, next to a photo of me and Grandma Margaret in Napa Valley, where she was pointing at a vineyard and saying, "You'll grow bigger than this, Alex." The summer before Stanford, I went back to Napa to stay with Grandma. Isaac stayed in San Francisco, traveling with friends, all expenses paid by our parents. I spent my days at Grandma's, helping tend her vineyard and preparing for my first year of college. One afternoon, as we sat on her porch sipping iced tea, she took my hand. "Do you know why I love these vines?" she asked. I shook my head. "Because they have to fight to grow. The soil here is tough, but their roots dig deep, drawing every drop of water. You're like that, Alex. Let the struggles shape you. They'll make you stronger than anyone." Her words were like medicine. I returned to San Francisco with iron resolve. I found a part-time job at a fintech startup in Silicon Valley, a 20-minute bus ride from Stanford. The job wasn't glamorous. Data entry, basic analysis, sometimes fetching coffee for engineers. But it paid $15 an hour, enough to save for books and living expenses. I also secured a partial scholarship from Stanford and a low-interest student loan. I rented a small room in a shared apartment with 3 other students, far from the upscale dorms Isaac lived in. My room barely fit a single bed, a rickety desk, and a tiny closet. But I didn't care. This was my start, and I was going to make it count. On my first day at Stanford, I walked into the lecture hall with a mix of excitement and nerves. The sandstone buildings, lush green lawns, and vibrant energy of young minds made me feel like I belonged. But I also knew I was different. While most of my classmates came from affluent families, I counted every penny, weighing whether to buy a textbook or eat a proper meal. Isaac, meanwhile, showed up in a brand new suit, driving the Porsche our parents bought, and quickly became the center of attention in his social circle. I heard him talk about dorm parties and lavish dates, and I just smiled, hiding the bitter sting. But Stanford brought me an unexpected gift: Olivia. I met her in microeconomics class when she sat next to me and asked to borrow a pen. Olivia had blonde hair tied high, warm brown eyes, and a smile that made me forget my stress. "You look like you just ran a marathon to get to class," she teased, noticing the sweat on my forehead after my bus ride from work. I laughed, telling her about my crazy schedule, and she listened without judgment. That day we worked on a group project together and I discovered Olivia wasn't just smart. She had a big heart. She grew up in a small town, got into Stanford on a scholarship, and knew what it was like to fight to survive. Olivia became my first friend at Stanford. We studied together, shared cheap cafeteria meals, and sometimes laughed about our big dreams. "You're going to do great things, Alex," she said one night as we sat on the campus lawn, staring at the starry sky. "I see it in how you work. It's like you've got a fire inside." I smiled, thinking of Grandma Margaret. Maybe they were right. Maybe that fire was burning and I wouldn't let anyone, not even my parents, put it out. Meanwhile, Isaac didn't seem to take studying seriously. He skipped classes, turned in late assignments, and spent most of his time partying. I overheard classmates whispering that Isaac only got into Stanford because of our parents' connections, and it made me both sad and angry. I didn't want him to fail, but I couldn't deny the quiet satisfaction of outperforming him on exams. I worked relentlessly, studying, working, paying off loans. Every night back in my tiny room, I looked at the paper on the wall. Work, study, don't give up. And I told myself this was just the beginning. Stanford was a battlefield, and I was a warrior without flashy armor. Every day was a race against time. Mornings in class, afternoons at the startup, nights grinding through assignments until dawn. My shared room was a mess of textbooks, sticky notes plastered across the desk, and cold coffee cups next to my laptop. But I loved that rhythm. It made me feel alive, like I was fighting for something bigger than myself. Whenever exhaustion tempted me to give up, I thought of Grandma Margaret, of the pride in her eyes when I told her about my projects. And I thought of my parents, of how they called me backup. That word was like a needle piercing my pride, but instead of breaking me, it pushed me forward. The blockchain and financial risk management class was where I truly shone. Professor David Chen, a wiry man with sharp eyes, stood at the lectern talking about how technology could reshape finance. I sat in the front row, scribbling notes furiously, my heart racing every time he posed a question. Once he asked the class to analyze the risks of a decentralized trading platform. I worked for 3 sleepless nights building a predictive model based on real data from the startup where I worked. When I presented it to the class, the room fell silent. Professor Chen nodded, the corner of his mouth twitching upward. "Mr. Grant, this is outstanding work. I'd like to meet with you after class." That meeting changed everything. Professor Chen became my mentor. He didn't just teach me about finance, but about strategic thinking, about seeing failure as a lesson. "You have something no one can teach," he said, looking me in the eye. "It's resilience. But don't let it become an obsession. Use it to create something great." I nodded, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. For the first time, I felt true recognition. Not from my parents, not from Isaac, but from someone who saw my real worth. Olivia was indispensable too. She wasn't just a study partner. She kept me sane on days I was running on fumes. Once I nearly passed out in the library after working 3 days straight with no break. Olivia showed up with a coffee and a protein bar, teasing, "Alex, are you trying to outdo Elon Musk in sleepless hours?" I laughed, the first time I'd done so that week. Olivia and I grew closer, sharing more than just schoolwork. We became a team, tackling group projects, debating fintech ideas, splitting cheap meals from food trucks near campus. Olivia had a way of making everything feel lighter, even when I was stressed to the breaking point. When I was anxious about applying for Stanford's fintech innovation competition, she dragged me to the campus lawn and made me lie down, staring at the sky. "Breathe, Alex," she said. "You've already done more than most people here. Trust yourself." I closed my eyes, feeling the cool grass beneath me, and for the first time in months, I felt relief. That fintech competition was a turning point. I pitched an idea for a blockchain-based trading platform to reduce transaction costs for small-scale investors. I worked day and night coding, building models, and getting Olivia's help to polish the presentation. After months of preparation and execution, I won first place. The prize wasn't just $10,000 in cash, but an internship opportunity at a leading fintech company. The news spread quickly, and for the first time I felt visible. Classmates started seeing me differently, not as Isaac's older brother, but as Alex, the guy who won the fintech competition. Meanwhile, Isaac was spiraling. He missed assignment deadlines, his grades plummeted, and he even got a warning from a professor for submitting a plagiarized essay. I heard from friends that he spent weekends at San Francisco parties cruising in his Porsche, bragging about his future CEO status. By my junior year at Stanford, I was excelling. I took advanced courses in blockchain, artificial intelligence, and risk management, earning A's in nearly every class. Professor Chen introduced me to a research group where I developed an algorithm to predict market volatility. My work at the startup progressed too. I was given bigger responsibilities, from data analysis to proposing system improvements. Each month I sent a small portion of my paycheck to chip away at my student loans, and though my wallet was always near empty, I felt free. Free because I was building my own future, relying on no one. But not every day was sunny. Some nights I stayed up, gripped by anxiety about balancing work and studies, wondering if I had the strength to keep going. Once I got an email from my parents, a perfunctory check-in reminding me to support Isaac if he needs it. I deleted it, a surge of anger rising. They still didn't see me, didn't see what I was doing. But then I thought of Olivia, Professor Chen, Grandma Margaret. They saw me. And more importantly, I was starting to see my own worth. As senior year approached, I knew I was nearing a major milestone: graduation. I didn't just want to graduate, I wanted to do it with pride, to stand on that stage and show the world that I, Alexander Grant, was no backup. I wanted my parents to see, Isaac to see, and above all, I wanted to believe that every drop of sweat, every sleepless night was worth it. And finally, the day arrived. The graduation ceremony took place on a radiant early summer day at Stanford. The campus was bathed in golden sunlight, with graduation caps soaring through the air as students tossed them skyward. I stood in line, my black gown billowing, my heart pounding. I had worked tirelessly to get here: a 4.0 GPA, a fintech award, and the title of summa cum laude, valedictorian of my class. But what made me nervous wasn't just the achievements. Today I was invited to speak at the ceremony, an honor I'd never dared to dream of. And I knew my parents and Isaac were out there, sitting somewhere in the crowd. I had prepared my speech for weeks, writing and rewriting, each word like a chisel carving into the years I was labeled backup. Olivia helped me rehearse, sitting in my tiny room, listening and offering feedback. "You have to speak your truth, Alex," she said, her eyes shining. "Not for revenge, but to tell your story, to show them who you are." I nodded, but deep down I knew this speech wasn't just my story. It was a declaration that I had surpassed the limits others set for me. As I stepped onto the stage, the weight of thousands of eyes fell on me. The university's cameras zoomed in, my image magnified on the large screen in my graduation gown. I took a deep breath, scanning the audience. In the front row, I saw Olivia, her smile as bright as the sun. Next to her was Grandma Margaret, her red silk scarf striking, her eyes gleaming with pride. And somewhere in the crowd, I caught a glimpse of my parents sitting beside Isaac. Dad sat ramrod straight, his face stern. Mom was adjusting her shawl, perhaps to hide her tension. Isaac kept his head down, avoiding my gaze. The university president introduced me. Alexander Grant, valedictorian of this class, who funded his own education and achieved extraordinary success in fintech. The audience applauded, but I caught whispers from my parents' direction. I knew they hadn't expected this, that I had paid for everything from tuition to living expenses while they poured money into Isaac. The president continued. "Alexander will share his journey, a story of perseverance and passion." I stepped to the microphone, my hands trembling slightly, but my voice steadier than I expected. "Ladies and gentlemen, faculty, families, and fellow students," I began, my voice carrying through the speakers. 4 years ago, when I arrived at Stanford, I had nothing but a dream and a piece of paper taped to my wall that read, "Work, study, Don't give up. I came here without financial support or recognition from my family. I came with the belief that my worth isn't defined by what others think, but by what I can achieve. I paused, taking a deep breath. The audience was silent, only the soft breeze audible. I worked 30 hours a week, paid off student loans, and lived in a tiny room with 3 others. There were nights I didn't sleep, not because of parties, but because I had to finish assignments, had to prove I was worthy. My parents once called me the backup son, said I lacked leadership. But today I stand here, not to prove them wrong, but to tell you this. Success doesn't come from ready-made support. It comes from the resolve to break through the limits others set for you. The audience erupted in applause. I looked down, seeing Olivia wipe away tears, Grandma Margaret clapping vigorously, her smile stretching ear to ear. But my eyes lingered on my parents. Dad sat frozen, his face pale. Mom clutched Isaac's hand, her eyes wide as if she'd been slapped. Isaac looked at me, and for the first time in years, his gaze held not his usual confidence, but unease, even shame. I didn't feel glee at their discomfort, but I felt relief, as if a boulder that had weighed on my heart for years had been lifted. As I stepped off the stage, Olivia ran up and hugged me tightly. "You did it, Alex," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Grandma Margaret pulled me into a fierce embrace, murmuring, "You're my fire, Alex." I smiled, tears streaming down my face, but this time they weren't from pain. They were tears of release. After the ceremony, I learned Isaac graduated with a 2.8 GPA, barely meeting the requirements for his degree. He wasn't on the honors list, had no awards, no speaking invitation. I didn't see my parents right after the ceremony. They left early without a word. Olivia said she saw Mom wiping tears in the parking lot while Dad drove off silently. I didn't know what they felt, shame, regret, or just anger at the truth being laid bare before hundreds. But I no longer cared. That day I realized I didn't need their validation to feel enough. That evening, Olivia hosted a small party at her apartment. Just me, her, Grandma Margaret, and a few close friends from class. We drank cheap beer, laughed, and sang karaoke late into the night. After everyone left, Olivia and I sat on her balcony gazing at Palo Alto's twinkling lights. "Do you see it, Alex?" she said softly. "You did what no one thought you could. This is just the beginning." I nodded, holding her hand. For the first time, I felt I wasn't just Alexander Grant, the overlooked. I was Alexander Grant, the one who had conquered himself. A week after graduation, Olivia called me to a small coffee shop in Silicon Valley, where million-dollar ideas were often scribbled on napkins. She slid a business card across the table, her eyes sparkling. "Pinnacle Financial Technologies," she said. "They heard about your FinTech award and want to meet. This is big, Alex." Pinnacle. The name made my heart race. In the FinTech world, Pinnacle was a rising star, a young but ambitious company, a direct rival to Grant Financial Solutions. I knew my father, Michael, saw Pinnacle as a thorn in his side, often grumbling about their dirty tactics to gain market share. But I also knew Pinnacle was doing what my family's company wouldn't dare, heavily investing in blockchain and artificial intelligence, the fields I'd poured my sweat into studying at Stanford. I picked up the business card, feeling the smooth paper under my fingers, and nodded. "I'll meet them." The interview at Pinnacle was unlike anything I'd experienced. Their headquarters sat in downtown San Francisco, a sleek glass building with green-covered walls and open spaces flooded with light. I wore my only suit, a cheap one from a discount store, and stepped into a meeting room with 3 people, the head of strategy, the chief technology officer, and a man I later learned was William Harper, Pinnacle's chairman. They didn't ask about my GPA or awards. They asked about my ideas about the blockchain platform I'd pitched in the FinTech competition, about how I saw the future of finance. I spoke passionately, forgetting my nerves, as if I was born to be in that room. When it ended, William Harper smiled and extended his hand. "Welcome to Pinnacle, Alex. We need someone like you." I accepted the role as a strategy specialist at Pinnacle, turning down a reluctant offer from my father. A few days after graduation, he had called me to his office at Grant Financial Solutions, where the smell of polished wood and expensive coffee always made me feel out of place. "Alex," he said, his voice flat, "you did well at Stanford. We have a position in the analytics department if you want it." I looked at him, the man who'd called me backup, and shook my head. "Thank you, Dad, but I've chosen my own path." He frowned as if he couldn't fathom why I'd reject his favor. But I didn't need his pity anymore. I'd found where I belonged. My early days at Pinnacle were an adrenaline whirlwind. I worked with some of Silicon Valley's brightest minds, people who didn't care where I came from, only what I could bring. I was tasked with developing a new blockchain trading platform, building on my thesis idea. Each day I sat in an office with 3 computer monitors, coding, analyzing data, and debating with engineers on system optimization. I worked late, but not out of pressure. I worked because I loved it. The thrill of knowing every line of code, every decision could change how millions traded finances. Within 18 months, Pinnacle's blockchain platform launched and became a phenomenon. It slashed transaction costs to unprecedented lows, attracting millions of users, from individual investors to major funds. Articles in TechCrunch and Forbes called it a fintech revolution, and my name appeared in an interview as the mind behind the idea. Pinnacle climbed from the top 5 to number 1 in fintech rankings, surpassing Grant Financial Solutions. I still remember the day the rankings were announced. I was in the office checking emails when a colleague slapped my shoulder, pointing at the screen. "Alex, you see this? We beat Grant." I stared at the numbers, my heart pounding. Grant Financial Solutions, the company my parents built, the one they believed Isaac would inherit, was now number 2. I didn't call my parents to gloat. I didn't need to. They surely saw it. But a week later, something unexpected happened. Dad called, his voice trembling over the phone. "Alex, we need to talk. The company, it's struggling. We need you." I sat in my small apartment, gazing at San Francisco's lights, a wave of emotions surging. Part of me wanted to laugh at the irony that they only remembered me when their company faltered, but mostly I felt empty. "Dad," I said calmly, "Pinnacle saw my value from the start. Something you never did." I hung up, not waiting for his reply. Isaac, meanwhile, was working at Grant Financial Solutions, but things weren't going well. I heard he'd been given a managerial role, but lacking discipline and experience, he kept making mistakes. Once, Olivia sent me an article about a minor scandal at Grant, where a project Isaac led failed, costing millions. I didn't feel triumphant. I only felt pity for him, for the opportunities he'd squandered. At Pinnacle, I kept pushing forward. I was promoted to head of strategy, leading a team developing new fintech products. Each day, I felt myself growing stronger, like the vines Grandma Margaret spoke of, roots digging deep, thriving despite barren soil. And Olivia, always by my side, became an inseparable part of my life. One evening, as we walked along the bay, she took my hand, her voice serious. "Alex, I need to tell you something." My heart raced as I looked at her. "What is it?" She took a deep breath, then smiled. "I'm William Harper's daughter, the chairman of Pinnacle." Her words hit like a shockwave. I stood frozen, processing. Olivia, my best friend, the one who shared cheap meals, who stood by me, was the daughter of Pinnacle's chairman? A flicker of doubt crossed my mind. Was she using me? Had she approached me to undermine my family's company? But then I looked into her eyes, saw the sincerity there, and remembered every moment we'd shared. Olivia had never done anything but support me. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, my voice slightly shaky. She shrugged, smiling softly. "I wanted you to see me as Olivia, not someone's daughter. And I wanted you to succeed for you, not because of my dad." I nodded, my anger dissolving. Instead, I pulled her into a hug. "Thank you, Olivia," I whispered, "for everything." She smiled, squeezing my hand. In that moment, I knew what we had wasn't just friendship anymore. Something deeper was growing, but I wasn't ready to name it yet. Pinnacle kept soaring, and Olivia, now a colleague at the company joining as an analyst, became my perfect partner. We worked seamlessly, pitching ideas that stunned our team. Pinnacle's revenue skyrocketed, leaving Grant Financial Solutions far behind. Each victory was a confirmation. I didn't need my parents' validation to succeed. I had found my worth, and I was building a future I was proud of. 2 years after joining Pinnacle, I proposed to Olivia. I didn't choose a fancy restaurant or an extravagant gesture. Instead, I took her to Napa Valley, to Grandma Margaret's house, where my childhood memories were nurtured. Under the shade of an old oak tree by the vineyard, as the sunset bathed the valley in gold, I knelt down and took her hand. "Olivia," I said, my voice trembling, "you've been with me through my worst days, and you make every day better. I want to spend my life making you happy. Will you marry me?" She burst into tears, nodded, and pulled me up for a tight embrace. "Yes, Alex, 1,000 times, yes." Our wedding took place in Napa, in a stunning vineyard with lush green vines and ripe grape clusters. It was a summer afternoon, the sunlight filtering softly through the trees, casting shimmering patterns on the ground. Olivia wore a simple white wedding dress, her blonde hair flowing freely, beautiful like a dream. I stood there in a tailored suit, the first time I'd splurged on something so luxurious, feeling my heart might burst with happiness. Grandma Margaret, with her signature red silk scarf, sat in the front row wiping tears. William Harper, Olivia's father, clapped me on the shoulder before the ceremony, his voice warm. "You're a good man, Alex. I'm proud to have you as my son-in-law." Professor Chen was there too, offering a rare smile and saying, "You've come a long way, Alexander." I sent invitations to my parents and Isaac, though I wasn't sure they'd come. Part of me hoped they would, not to boast, but to see who I'd become. But as the ceremony began, I didn't see them. Olivia squeezed my hand, whispering, "Don't worry, Alex. Today is about us." I nodded, focusing on her, on this moment. As we exchanged vows, I looked into Olivia's eyes and saw my whole world, a world where I was no longer backup, but loved and valued. The reception was an outdoor feast, with long tables draped in white, lanterns hanging above, and soft jazz music floating through the air. We cut the cake, danced our first dance under the stars, and laughed with friends from Pinnacle. Grandma Margaret shared stories of my childhood, making everyone roar with laughter. William Harper raised a toast, calling me the man who helped make Pinnacle #1. I looked around, seeing the faces of those who cared: Olivia, Grandma Margaret, Professor Chen, my Pinnacle colleagues, and realized this was my true family. Not the one I was born into, but the one I chose. That moment wasn't just about love, it was a declaration. I had surpassed my family's company not just by pushing Pinnacle to the top, but by building a life on my own terms. Olivia being William Harper's daughter only added irony to the story. I hadn't just beaten Grant Financial Solutions in the market, I'd become part of their biggest rival's family, but it wasn't revenge. It was victory. The victory of someone once overlooked, once called backup, now standing tall on his own. After the wedding, Olivia and I returned to work at Pinnacle, where we remained an unstoppable duo. We developed new projects together, from sustainable investment platforms to financial tools for individual users. Pinnacle's revenue soared, leaving Grant Financial Solutions now dropped to third in the industry, far behind. I stopped following news about my family's company, but occasionally I heard Isaac had left Grant after a string of failures, and my parents were scrambling to save their empire. One evening, as Olivia and I sat in our new San Francisco apartment, a cozy place with large windows overlooking the bay, she turned to me and asked, "Do you ever regret not going back to Grant Financial Solutions?" I shook my head, taking her hand. "Number, because I found where I belong. With you, with Pinnacle, with myself." She smiled, resting her head on my shoulder. In that moment, I knew every hardship, every sleepless night, every drop of sweat, it was all worth it.